You know, when people hear the phrase, the woman who can walk away controls everything, they sometimes mistake it for coldness or emotional detachment. But let me be clear, this isn't about playing games or pretending not to care. It's a different kind of strength, one rooted not in detachment from love, but in attachment to yourself. The woman who can walk away isn't emotionless. She feels deeply. She wants connection, but she never lets her desire for someone else outweigh her value for herself. She doesn't let her emotions hold her hostage. She knows loving someone doesn't mean surrendering her standards, and it doesn't mean sacrificing her peace. That kind of woman is powerful, not because she's controlling, but because she's in control of her life, her energy, her boundaries. See, most people think control in relationships comes from managing the other person, what they say, what they do, how they feel about us. But that isn't real control. That's insecurity wearing a disguise. Real control is internal. It's knowing that no matter what someone else does, you'll be fine. That you're not relying on someone to complete you. You're choosing them to complement you. And here's the shift. When you don't need someone to choose you, that's when you become the most powerful choice, because you're no longer coming from desperation. You're coming from discernment. Think about it. How many people stay in relationships long after they know it's wrong for them? They stay because they're afraid they won't find better, afraid they'll end up alone, afraid they're asking for too much. And when fear drives your decisions, you start compromising your standards. You start shrinking yourself. You start begging for scraps and calling it love. But the woman who can walk away doesn't do that, not because it's easy, but because she's trained herself to choose peace over chaos, self-worth over validation, long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort. And this isn't about ultimatums or threatening to leave every time someone slips up. It's far more subtle and far more powerful than that. It's the quiet confidence of knowing, if this doesn't honor me, I'll let it go. That energy changes everything, because the moment someone senses you can walk, not from indifference, but from genuine self-respect, it creates a shift. It sets a standard. Suddenly, you're not the one waiting for a text, over-analyzing their tone or trying to fix everything to make it work. You're not earning your place in someone's life. You're simply watching to see if they deserve a place in yours. There's a difference between attachment and addiction. One nourishes you, the other drains you. And the woman who can walk away knows that difference. She knows when love starts costing her joy, her dignity, or her peace, it's too expensive. Now, let me be honest, walking away doesn't always look strong. Sometimes it feels like heartbreak, like disappointment, like letting go of a dream. But strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's simply not answering the text you want to answer, because you know it leads back into a cycle you've outgrown. Sometimes it's waking up alone instead of waking up beside someone who makes you feel lonelier than solitude ever could. I understand it isn't always easy, but every time you choose yourself, you're retraining your mind. You're telling yourself, I am enough. I am worth choosing. And if someone else can't see that, it doesn't mean I need to try harder. It means I need to walk away. And here's the thing, people feel that energy. They sense when you're operating from wholeness versus lack. When you're capable of walking away, you're not negotiating from fear. You're standing in truth. And that changes how people show up around you. Some will rise to meet you. Others will fall away. That's fine. You're not for everyone. And you were never meant to be. You're not meant to be chosen by someone who needs you to shrink first. You're meant to be chosen exactly as you are. So when I say the woman who can walk away controls everything, I don't mean she manipulates the game. I mean she rises above it. She operates on a different level. Because once you know your worth, you stop chasing what costs you it. The woman who can walk away doesn't just know her power, she lives it. And that's what makes her unforgettable. When someone says the woman who can walk away controls everything, it's tempting to assume it's about playing hard to get, but it runs much deeper than that. It's about something far more powerful. It's standards. See, standards aren't about being difficult. They're not about being bossy, rigid, or having some impossible checklist. Standards are about your worth. They're about teaching the world how to treat you through how you treat yourself. A woman with high standards isn't trying to control anyone. She's not controlling controlling. She's clear. She knows her values. She knows what she won't compromise on. And she isn't afraid to stand in that truth, even if it means being alone for a while. Here's a truth most people won't tell you. High standards don't scare off the right people. They scare off the wrong ones. And that's exactly the point. If someone disappears because you refuse to settle for minimum effort, you haven't lost a thing. You've saved your time. You've protected your heart. You've made room for something better. That's not rejection. That's clarity. Too often we mistake being chosen for being valued. So we start shrinking. We lower the bar just to keep someone around. We tell ourselves, maybe I'm asking too much. Maybe I need to be more flexible. Maybe if I hang on a little longer, they'll come around. But deep down, we know we're bargaining away our self-respect. The woman who can walk away doesn't negotiate her non-negotiables. That's what makes her powerful. Not because she threatens to leave, but because she doesn't need to stay where love isn't honored. Think about it. We live in a world where everyone fears being alone. So what do most people do? They settle, they cling, they compromise again and again until they no longer recognize themselves. But the woman who can walk away doesn't fear solitude. She chooses it over settling. And that's where the real control lies. Because the moment you're willing to lose someone who isn't showing up for you, you stop being afraid, you start being free. And in that freedom, you become magnetic. See, there's a reason people are drawn to women who know their worth. It isn't arrogance, it's alignment, it's how she carries herself, it's the peace of knowing she doesn't have to chase love. She is love. She brings value into every space she enters, so she doesn't waste energy convincing anyone of her worth. And the moment you stop trying to convince someone to see you, the moment you start living like someone already worthy, everything changes. You stop investing in potential. You start responding to patterns. You stop over-explaining your needs. You start expecting them to be met, not through entitlement, but through self-respect. Having standards doesn't mean demanding perfection. It means demanding intention. It means demanding consistency. It means saying, meet me where I am, or I'm willing to walk away with love, with peace, but with certainty. You don't do it to manipulate. You do it because your peace matters more than someone's promises. You do it because energy speaks louder than words. You do it because your time is sacred and you don't waste sacred things on temporary people. So many of us think we need to do more to be chosen. But the truth is, once you know your value, you start doing less. Less chasing, less explaining, less tolerating, because you realize someone who truly values you won't need convincing. They'll simply recognize you. The irony is that the woman who can walk away doesn't actually want to. She isn't looking for a reason to leave. She wants to stay. She wants connection. She wants to love fully and deeply, but she isn't willing to abandon herself to do it. And because she's willing to leave if she isn't loved properly, she ends up attracting the kind of person who's ready to love her that way. The kind who doesn't take her for granted, who steps up, who sees her clearly and says, I'm not letting this one go. That's why the woman who can walk away controls everything. Most people think love means being available, always there, always giving, always present. But what they forget is that availability without value is just noise. When something is always there, always giving, never stepping back, it starts getting taken for granted. Not because people are bad, but because that's human nature. We value what we could lose. That's why the woman who can walk away, who knows when to lean back instead of always leaning in, who can say, this isn't enough for me, without raising her voice, becomes the one everyone wants. When you carry the ability to walk away, you don't need to use it as a threat. It speaks for itself. That's the paradox. The woman who can say, I don't need this situation to define my worth, is the one who shifts the entire dynamic. She becomes rare in a world full of people clinging desperately to things that aren't good for them. That rarity creates value because we chase what we fear losing and we respect what doesn't need us to survive. You see, most people enter relationships like gamblers at a slot machine. They keep pulling the lever, hoping this time something changes. But the woman who understands her value knows when to stop feeding a machine that isn't paying out. She doesn't keep spending her emotional energy on someone who isn't reciprocating. And when she steps back, she doesn't do it to punish or manipulate. She does it because she knows her energy, her presence, her love, all of it holds value. And you don't hand value to anyone who hasn't earned it. That's the kind of woman who doesn't chase validation. She doesn't stay just to prove she's lovable. She knows her love is a gift and she reserves it for someone who understands that. That kind of energy is rare. That's what makes someone turn their head and think, wait, I don't want to lose her. Not because she's playing games, but because she's living in alignment with her standards. It isn't about being cold. It isn't about being aloof or distant. It's about being clear on what you want, what you deserve, what you won't tolerate. And when you're clear, your energy becomes magnetic. You stop sending mixed signals. You stop accepting half effort. You stop tolerating potential and start honoring reality. That's the switch. That's when everything changes. And here's what's interesting. The moment you stop chasing someone's attention, you create space for their desire to grow. But even more importantly, you create space for your peace to return, because that peace is where your power lives, not in obsessing over someone's texts, not in overanalyzing every interaction, not in convincing someone of your worth. Your power lives in knowing your life continues beautifully, fully, unapologetically, with or without them. The moment you're willing to walk away, you stop negotiating your self-worth. You stop shrinking to fit someone else's comfort zone. You stop overcompensating for what someone else lacks, and you start standing taller, not from arrogance, but because you finally remembered who you are. And when you carry that energy, the energy of a woman who can walk away, you don't need to control anything. You already control everything because your presence becomes a choice, not a default. And the truth is, not everyone will rise to meet you when you walk in that power. Some will let you go, some won't even notice. And that's fine, because the woman who can walk away doesn't fear that. She trusts the right person will recognize her value without needing to be chased, fixed, or convinced. And meanwhile, she isn't waiting. She's growing, she's living, she's glowing, because when you know you can walk away, you know you don't have to. You're not acting from fear, you're acting from strength. And that strength changes the game entirely. She becomes the prize. You don't need to convince someone to love you the right way. That's one of the most freeing truths you'll ever learn. And yet it's where so many people get stuck. They think if they just say the right thing or prove their loyalty or show how much they care, the other person will finally treat them the way they deserve. But love doesn't work that way. Relationships aren't negotiations where one side pleads for what they need and the other finally gives in out of guilt or obligation. Real connection, genuine, mutual, respectful love doesn't require convincing. It requires alignment. Here's what you need to understand. Your energy teaches people how to treat you. Not your words, not your lectures, not the long texts explaining your worth, not the late night calls hoping they'll understand. It's your energy. How you show up, what you tolerate, what you walk away from. That tells someone everything they need to know about how they can show up with you. See, when you tolerate inconsistency, you tell someone your time isn't valuable. When you make excuses for someone's bad behavior, you communicate that you'll accept less than you deserve. When you keep giving chances to someone who won't meet you halfway, your energy says, I'll stay as long as you give me just enough to hope for. Don't mistake that for weakness. It's not weakness. It's fear. Fear that maybe this is the best you'll get, that maybe love means being patient to the point of self-abandonment, that if you leave, you won't find anything better. But the truth is, every time you betray your own boundaries to keep someone around, you teach them their comfort matters more than your dignity. Imagine what it feels like to be around someone who doesn't chase, doesn't cling, doesn't endlessly explain herself, but instead stands in her calm, unwavering value. She's kind but clear, She's loving, but she won't settle. That woman teaches people how to love her, not through demands, but through her presence. Her energy speaks louder than any speech could, and that's what makes her unforgettable. When someone notices you're not afraid to lose them, it shifts the dynamic. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're grounded in the reality that you're already whole. You aren't looking for someone to complete you. You're looking for someone to complement the life you've built, the self-respect you embody, the peace you refuse to trade for chaos disguised as passion. This doesn't mean you never open up. It doesn't mean you close your heart or become guarded or cold. It means you stop begging to be chosen. You stop giving more than you receive, hoping it'll inspire change. You stop tolerating patterns that leave you drained, anxious, or confused. You choose calm over chaos, consistency over potential, clarity over confusion. If you want to change how someone treats you, stop explaining and start demonstrating. Pull your energy back from what isn't feeding your soul. Let your absence be felt instead of letting your presence be too easy to misuse. Because when someone realizes you're capable of walking away, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, that's when the power shifts. That isn't manipulation. That's truth. And it isn't about punishing anyone either. It's about alignment. If someone genuinely wants to be with you, they'll rise. If they don't, they'll fall away. And that's a gift. That's clarity. You're not here to raise someone into loving you properly. You're here to meet someone who already does. So the next time you feel the urge to explain why you deserve better, pause. Ask yourself, does my energy match my standing? Am I showing up like someone who believes she's worthy of being loved fully, deeply, and consistently? Because if you are, you won't need to convince anyone. You'll either be met at your level or you'll walk away with your dignity intact, knowing you made room for something greater. The woman who can walk away doesn't do it to prove a point. She does it because she doesn't need to prove anything at all. Walking away isn't losing, it's choosing. It's one of the most powerful decisions a woman can make, and yet it's so often misunderstood. We've been conditioned to think leaving means we failed, that if a relationship doesn't last, we somehow didn't try hard enough. But that couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, walking away, when it comes from a place of clarity and self-respect, is one of the highest forms of self-love there is. Think about it. It's easy to stay. It's easy to keep hoping someone will change, that things will improve, that love will somehow fix what's broken. We tell ourselves stories to justify the time invested. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I just need more patience. Maybe they're going through a phase. And in the process, we shrink, we bend, we compromise, not just our standards, but our peace, our joy, our essence. But the woman who can walk away sees clearly. She knows love isn't just about how much you feel. It's about how you're treated. It's about how consistently someone shows up. It's about whether you feel safe, seen, and cherished. And if those things are missing, she's willing to choose herself, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when every part of her wants to hold on. That's what most people don't understand. Walking away isn't emotionless. It isn't cold. It isn't done out of spite or ego. It's done out of alignment. It's choosing truth over comfort. It's saying, I love you, but I won't lose myself to keep you. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you embrace that mindset, you stop needing control, and that's when you actually have it. Not control over the other person, but over your own life. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop auditioning for love. You stop negotiating your value. You just are. And that kind of presence is incredibly powerful, because when someone knows you're willing to walk, not as a threat, but as a quiet truth, they show up differently. If they truly care, they rise. They meet your energy. They realize your love is a privilege, not a guarantee. But if they don't, well, you've just saved yourself months, maybe years, of trying to convince someone who was never really in it. We spend so much time trying to win people over. We think if we just do more, give more, prove more, they'll finally see our worth. But what we forget is that our worth doesn't grow because someone recognizes it. It's already there. The question was never whether you're enough. The question is whether they're capable of seeing what's right in front of them. And if they're not, That isn't your burden to carry. That's your cue to let go. Letting go doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you cared enough about yourself to stop waiting for someone else to catch up. It means trusting that better exists, that you won't die from heartbreak, but you can die a slow emotional death staying in places that don't nourish your soul. So many people ask, but what if I walk away and they never come back? And my answer is always the same.